at three things. Why do we do what we do? What are our goals? What are we looking for in the lives of the kids? And then how are we going to get to our goals? Now, I already know that Doris and Catherine are seasoned teachers. Catherine, right?
Yes.
Or is it Kathleen?
Catherine.
Catherine are seasoned teachers. I've been told that most of the people in the room look up to the two of you for ideas regarding teaching. And so today, as we jump into this and we talk about how we're going to do it, for some of you, it could be a refresher. For some of you, there may be some brand new ideas that you've never tried before. And then after we do this first part, Teaching for Changed Lives, we're going to come back and look at learning styles, how children learn, and why we need to use a variety of teaching methodologies in our classrooms. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So let me give you the handout.
Pastor, can I say something really fast?
Yes.
So we're not only have Sunday school teacher here, we actually have parents also join us this
Very
morning.
good.
So this
All
is
right.
actually really, really, really good.
Who is a parent that is not a teacher in the room?
Me.
All right. You may be a teacher before the end of the day. You may also become a teacher before the end of the day. I am glad you're here because that is very important that we do this. You know what? I'm going to take off on that and just share something with you.
Yeah.
As I shared last night, my kids are 51, 44, 39, 17, 14, and 13. When we got Jonathan Gabriel in summer, we were taking him to church, and I looked at what was happening at church and who was teaching, and I went to the leadership in my church and I said, you know what, I have some good news and bad news. The good news is I love our church. The bad news is I will not raise my boys. They were 6 and 3. At that time, actually, by then they were like 10 and 6. I said, I will not raise my boys in a church where their entire elementary experience, they are taught by women. And I said, women are better teachers than men. They prepare better. But I do not want my boys to grow up thinking that real men don't teach. I said, I want my boys to grow up believing that this is what real men do. Real men make a commitment to teaching children God's Word. I said, I also want to teach their class. I said, I want to teach all of my children at least 1 or 2 years. And I said, I want my daughter to see me teaching so that she doesn't think that this is women's work and that real men don't teach. Does this make sense to you? Now, at the end of 5th grade, one of the things I always do with my 5th graders is I say to all of my 5th graders, before they leave me, I say, you're getting ready to go into the middle school group. And I line all of them up, and I have these medallions made, and the medallion's on a ledger, and the medallion has their name, and on the medallion it says, tomorrow's champions for the gospel. And I give them this medallion, and I say, if you decide ever that you're going to turn your back on the Lord, I'm giving you the package that it came in the box. And your responsibility is to mail this medallion back to me and tell me why you've turned your back on the Lord. I do this with 5th graders. And then I tell the 5th grade girls, you're going into middle school. And when you get into the middle school class, there are going to be a lot of 8th grade boys going, yum, yum. Another cute girl. And I said, then they're going to say, can I start texting you? Can I sit with you? And I would tell the girls, I said, here's what I want you to do. When those boys want to start spending time with you, you look in the eyes and say, before I give you 1 minute of my time, I have a question for you. And the question is, when you grow up, are you going to be a Sunday school teacher? And if the answer is no, say, adios, I'm done with you. You know what? And I tell my daughter, she's now 13, she's the most beautiful girl in the school. She is a sweetheart. And the boys in the school are beginning to notice how pretty Faith is. Faith, that's her mother. Summer, how beautiful Summer is. And I tell her all the time, don't forget the question you have to ask any boy who wants to sit by you or communicate with all. You ask them, are you going to be a Sunday school teacher when you finally grow up? And I said, you know what to do. If they say no, you tell them, goodbye, I won't spend any time with you. Now I say that jokingly, but I meant it. I mean it. I want our girls to grow up in a church where they see men teaching both girls and boys. I think it's so important because that sets the stage for their whole family's future, doesn't it? So as we talk about teaching for changed lives today, you can take your ministry to the peak. Some of you are doing a very good job already. And that simply means that, well, let me explain it to you this way. When I lived in Sacramento, actually I lived east of Sacramento in Cameron Park toward South Lake Tahoe. And there were days that I was just really tired of talking to churches on the telephone. I didn't want to talk to another person on the telephone, and I would hop in my car, I would drive up Highway 50, and there was a place I could pull off the road on Highway 50 where there was this massive granite mountain, and the road came through here. And some days I would just drive up there and I would sit, lean against the side of my car, and just let my mind be refreshed. There were other days that I would climb up the mountain. And what I discovered is when I climbed up the mountain and turned around, the view was absolutely stunning. It was magnificent. Because you see, you had the mountain, and they cut through the mountain for the road, and then you had the Truckee River, and then you had the other half of the mountain. You have the picture in your mind? But you know what I also realized? That when I just leaned against my car, I didn't see the beauty on the other side of the river. But when I put in the effort and the time and the energy and climbed the mountain, when I turned around, the view was very, very spectacular. And I said, you know what, this is kind of like teaching children Sunday school. If you put the effort into it, and the more effort you put into it, I've discovered that as I climbed that mountain, the higher I went, the more difficult it became to breathe. And I had to make a choice. Am I going to go higher, or am I going to just turn around and go back down the mountain? You with me in this, the analogy I'm making here? But I realized that when we teach children, we make a choice about the amount of effort we're going to put into it. And I believe that today what God wants to happen is, I believe He wants me to equip you, encourage you, and challenge you, and then He will bring the conviction to us. And then you get to determine how much commitment you're going to bring to your ministry, and if you want to take your class to the peak. Does this make sense? And when we think about this, I know that there's no one in the room that would say today, well, you know what, I'm really content just being a mediocre teacher. You know what, average is good enough for me. And I'm content with being a mediocre teacher. I don't think there's anyone in the room that would admit that. You wouldn't say, yeah, you know, you would say, yes, Janet, I just want to be mediocre. I think you're here because you want to become great teachers and you want to take your class to the peak. So as we think about that today, I want to give just a couple of statistics and some background information. And we know that about children and adults, we know that 64% of the church adults, that is the kids' parents that come to our churches, say they really don't believe this book is true. Did you know that 64% of the adults who attend church on a regular basis say they do not believe there is an objective standard for right and wrong, and they don't believe in absolute truth? Now what are they saying? They're saying, if this is not the objective standard for our behavior, and I don't believe that it is absolute truth, I don't believe the book is true. Now, with that in mind, we also know this. We know that 94, you know this already, don't you? You know that 94% of the parents don't do anything at home because the parents in their lives, as we talked about last night, are so busy. They're so busy. And we know that 94% say, I just don't have
The
time to do it. Yeah. Here's what we also know about these kids' parents. We know that 82% of them say, my life is so busy that most weeks I never open my Bible between Sundays because my life is crazy busy. Now I want us to think about those statistics for just a moment. If I have kids sitting in my Sunday school class, and I'm asking them questions, because that's one of the teaching methodologies we all use. We teach and we say, now boys and girls, and we ask questions, and you know what? If they're really, into it, they're saying, pick me, teacher, I know the answer, because kids like giving us the right answer, don't they? What they really like to do is give us the answer that we are wanting to hear from them, don't they? Mm-hmm. So their minds are thinking, okay, what do they want to hear? And here's the conclusion I've come to. That if their parents are not reinforcing it, if their parents are not reading the Bible themselves, and if their parents don't live like they believe the Bible is the source of truth, these kids are sitting there, and very often we might be asking them questions, and it's pick me, and they give us the answer that they think we want to hear. But I think very often inside their little hearts, they're saying, I know that's the answer you want, but that's not the way we live at my house. I think we have a lot of kids like that. We also know something else. We know that 32% of the children who come through your church's ministry will have a life-transforming experience with Jesus Christ. Now you say, that's kind of low. 32%. When we talk about a life-transforming experience, it means that 32% are going to stick with it for their whole life. They're not going to be part of the 70% that drop out before the end of high school. We also know this, that if we don't reach them as children, the odds are extremely low that they're going to come to Christ in the youth ministries of our churches. We know that only 4% of the kids who come into our youth ministry in our churches who are not born again believers in Jesus Christ, and only 4% of them will make a decision for Jesus. That's kind of scary. It also says we have the best opportunity. And then when we look at adults, where we spend most of our money in our churches, they have a 6% chance if they're not already born again and not coming to our fellowship. So where do we want to be? We want to be in children's ministry because that's where we have the greatest opportunity. And so that leads me to a question. And I'd like you to answer the question. And I am not looking for the right answer, boys and girls. I am looking for what is in your head right now. If I ask you, tell me why you teach Sunday school. Somebody give me an answer. Come on. I'm not looking for the right answer. I want to know, why do you teach, honestly? Yes?
I teach because I think kids are innocent, and how much you put back, and they will return back to you.
Okay.
And they're real, not phony.
Okay. No one's ever said that. A brand new answer. Thank you for showing it. Somebody else. Why do you teach?
Because my kids.
Because your kids, are they in your class?
Yeah, I told them before they already.
Okay. You teach because you have kids here. Somebody else. Same reason? Some of you teach because...
Yeah, I can force myself to read the Bible.
Because it forces you to read the Bible. Very good, because you know that you're learning more than any of those kids are learning, aren't you? Some people teach because nobody else would take the Bible. Right? Sure.
Sounds like my question answers.
Some of you teach because you have the spiritual gift of teaching and you want to use it to influence the next generation for Jesus Christ. There are all kinds of reasons why we come into a classroom. But I want to suggest that if we really want to become great teachers, let's see what the next slide says, then we have to have a vision for every contact we have with the kids. We have to have a vision for every contact. Now, I shared with you last night, and so I want you to kind of get the picture of my good fortune in teaching for the past, well, from 2001 to 2016, I lived in a town of 1,900 people. But we did have a super Walmart. When you live in a town of 1,900 people, there's a very good chance that you're going to bump into some of your Sunday school kids, right?
Yeah.
Sure. So I said, my vision for the contacts with the kids is when I bump into them at Super Walmart, I'm going to remind them of the memory verse, but I'm going to do it in a way that they will never, ever forget. So I was in Super Walmart, and I saw a family and some of the kids from my Sunday school class there, and they said to their mom, "Hey, there's Mr. Crider, can we go see him?" And so the kids are coming toward me. I'm in the produce section, and I went like this. As they approached me, I went, "Ah!" And I did a death roll, and I died on the floor of Walmart. And then I looked up and I said, "What was our memory verse?" And they said, "If you suffer as a Christian, if you suffer as a Christian, do not be ashamed, but praise God that you bear that name." One time, they were in the store, and they came running up to me. I went, "Shh, shh, shh." I went very quiet. I said, "What was the verse?" They said, Deuteronomy 29:29. "For the secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us and our children forever." Now, you may not see your children that are in your Sunday school class at the store, but you're going to see them when they walk through the door. So my question is, when they come in even for worship, do I have a vision as a teacher for that contact right there? Or am I going to be standing around talking with other adults, or coming in late, or taking care of my family? Or am I going to be here so that when they walk in, I have a vision for that contact with them? Does that make sense to you? And you know what? When you do crazy things like that, they remember those things forever, don't they? They do. They do. I remember one time we were doing the review celebration, and we had three kids in my class, and that next week their parents were leaving to go to the Dominican Republic. Their whole family were becoming missionaries in the Dominican Republic. And in the review celebration, I gave away, when they won, I gave away cash. And then I invited all the kids in the classroom to give the cash to these kids who were going to the Dominican Republic as a gift. And they all did. But then one of the girls from the class, not one of these three kids, walked up to me. She said, "Mr. Crider, they put all the money in your pocket." I said, "What?" I went to these three kids, and I went to Trinity and said, "Trinity, why did you put the money in my pocket? I want you to have this." We had just had a lesson the week before about money. And she said, "Because last week you taught us to not become lovers of money." And I said, "But I wanted you to have that money when you went to the Dominican Republic." She said, "Mr. Crider, when I go to the Dominican Republic, I want my God to provide, and I want to know He's doing it." Now, I want you to go forward now. This was 5th grade. I want you to go 5 years forward to 10th grade. You with me? We were getting ready to move, and I invited a girl and a boy from that Sunday school class. He was the center now for the football team, a senior, and here's his sister to help me pack the truck to move. They came, they helped me pack, they worked very hard all day. And at the end, I said, "Come here, I'm going to pay you." And they said, "No, you're not." I said, "Yes, I am. I'm going to pay you." They said, "You're not paying us." And they went like this, they folded their arms, and they said, "You're not paying us." And they said, "This is the first time we've ever had an opportunity to give back to you for what you gave to us." And then the girl was a 10th grader, she says, "And don't you remember that 5th grade lesson about not becoming lovers of money?" 5 years later. You see, when you have a purpose, you with me? When you have a purpose, when you know what you want to happen, then God honors that. And we see the results years down the line. Do I have a vision? Do my lessons, when I walk in that classroom, does my lesson have a purpose? Now, if we look at Matthew 7, 24 to 29, in those scripture verses, it is the conclusion of the Sermon on the Mount. Now, I've always kind of in my mind visualized Jesus. He has preached this, the greatest sermon that's ever been preached. And he sees the people standing up and going, and yawning, and kids are saying, Mommy, I'm hungry, I want to go home, I need to go to the bathroom, whatever it might be, right? And Jesus reads the body language. And he says, before you go, I have one last thing to say. If you have heard me today, and you do what I have said, you are a wise man. In other words, he said, you're wise. You're smart. You're wise. But he said, if you hear what I say today, and you walk out and do not do it, you're a fool. You're a fool. James put it this way. James said, be a doer of the word, not just a hearer. Because if you are just a hearer, kids, this is what I would say to my class. Hey kids, if you're just hearing what I say today, and you walk out and you not do it, you're like me getting up in the morning, looking in the mirror and seeing how bad I really look, but I look in the mirror and say, you're looking good today. And I go off to wherever I'm going for the day, looking like that. And James says you are self-deluded. In other words, he says you're lying to yourself. So the point is this, that when I teach my kids in my Sunday school class, my purpose is that they would be doers. When I teach my kids at home, my purpose is that they would become a doer, that they would do the things we're learning, not just being able to recite them back to me, but they become a part of their life. That is very important. Now, we talk about having a purpose for our lessons and being doers. This is in every teacher's guide, every week, and yet I think we miss it so frequently. And that is that we have a very clear mandate for what we are supposed to be doing with them and what they're supposed to be becoming. In other words, as Jesus had come out of the tomb, he said to his disciples, meet me on the mountain where we've met so many times before. And they go up to the mountain, and Jesus is there. And Jesus says to his disciples, now 11, Judas is gone. And he said, men, because you see Jesus knows something. He knows he's going back to the Father very soon, doesn't he? Can you just imagine with me for a moment the elation that Jesus must have felt when he could say to himself, I'm getting out of this world. I'm going back and I'm going to be restored to my former glory. In just a little while, the angels are going to be singing as I make that grand entrance, and the Father is going to rejoice that I've come home. But I think inside he was always also saying, but I love these guys deeply. They are my best friends. He loved them passionately. And so he said to them, like a father talking to his child that is leaving for college, I'm going to give you some last minute instruction. And he said to them, he said, men, go into the world and make disciples. Now he used that word because he knew they would understand it. Because he had been doing what? With them and for them for 3 years. He'd been discipling them. So what was he saying? He was saying, go into the world and reproduce yourself. And that is our mandate as a church. With a capital C, the church. That's our mandate. He says, above everything else, when you go to teach, make disciples. And these guys understood what he meant, didn't they? They understood. They knew that he meant go spend time. I've often wondered, what if Jesus, as he chose the disciples, had said to them, okay guys, 11 to 12:30 every Saturday morning, at the synagogue. That's all I'm asking. Would they have become disciples? Probably not. He asked for a life commitment, didn't he? He says, I want a life commitment from you. And he said, then after you, in his heart, he said, after I have discipled them, I will tell them to go out and reproduce themselves. So I'm going to ask a question, and I need some answers. If our mandate is to go into the world and make disciples, what is discipleship? Now think about that for a moment. And if I ask you to give me 3 characteristics of a growing disciple, most often people say something like, well, let's see, a disciple is someone who spends time in the Bible. A disciple is someone who spends time in, come on, think about it, church. Okay? A disciple is someone who spends time in prayer, teaching. Sure. You know what's very interesting to me? My question was, give me 3 characteristics of a disciple. And every time I get 3 activities, not characteristics of the heart. Because isn't it possible that I could have, and the kids in my class could have, and the kids in my home could have this book memorized and still die and go to heaven? Isn't it possible they could be in church every time the doors open and still die and go to hell? Isn't it possible they could go away to a private place and spend their whole life praying and end up in hell? Yes, it is. Because you see, we have to have a purpose for those activities. So here's what we're going to focus on for the next few minutes so that we know where we are going with our students, what we are looking for in their life. So if we look at 3 characteristics of a growing disciple, the first is that they would know God intimately. Now, what does it take to develop that close, intimate relationship with someone? You have to spend time with them. What else? Can you just sit there for all the time just staring at each other? No. You have to do what? You have to talk with each other. Do we talk about the weather if we want to develop an intimate relationship? We talk about our hearts, don't we? Sure. We talk about our hearts. Before Bonnie and I got married, we spent a lot of time on the phone. And I wanted to be with her at every opportunity, didn't I? And the more I got to know her, the more I liked her. The more I saw her heart, and the more she saw my heart. If she really knew my heart, she would never have married me. I experienced with her what Jesus experienced with those 12 guys. That intimate relationship. And as a matter of fact, in John 15, it tells us that Jesus had preached his, John 12, he had preached his last public sermon. He was preaching very loud, exclaiming the good news. And they all rejected him. And he told the disciples, get out of here, go to the upper room and prepare for the Passover, and I'll meet you there. And he appears in the room, and he comes into this room, and he starts talking craziness to the disciples. I'm going to die very soon. What? And I am the vine, and you're the branches. You're going to do greater things than I've done. And I have to die so the Father can send the Counselor, the Comforter. And Peter is trying to tell him, be quiet. You're going to scare everybody. And then he gets down on the floor and he washes their feet. And then he says to them, men, I no longer call you my servants. I now call you my friends. What was he saying? After 3 years, we have this close, intimate relationship. You know what else he said? He says, I call you my friends and not my servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. But I have revealed to you everything the Father has taught me. Wow, can you imagine being one of those guys? that face to face Jesus had revealed to me everything the Father had taught him? Wow. He says, I no longer call you my servants. You are my best friends. What was he saying? He was saying that we have this intimate relationship. Now, you know what happens when you start developing that intimate relationship with someone like Bonnie and I. One day, I woke up and I said, oh my goodness sakes alive, I have fallen with Bonnie. Sure, because you see, God knows us as people, and God knows that the result of having an intimate relationship with Him is we fall in love with Him passionately. Not casually. So what if I'd said to Bonnie, boy, I have just had a wonderful time all of these months and years getting to know you. I have fallen in love with you. And I'd really like to spend about 45 minutes a week with you. She would say, wait a minute, you don't really
Love me.
Sure, you don't love me. And she would know that because I didn't want to be with her all the time. You see, falling in love with God passionately means I want to be with Him as much as possible, doesn't it? I have this intimate relationship. I fall in love with Him passionately. And a result of falling in love with someone passionately is very simple. You know what happens when you fall in love with someone passionately? You stop thinking about, and you start thinking about them. And what happened with Bonnie and I is, my heart now came to a place where I wanted to serve her. And that's what happens when we fall in love with God passionately. Our heart is changed. And we want to serve Him selflessly. Do you see how this progresses? We get to know Him intimately. Wow. We fall in love with Him passionately. Wow. And our heart is changed and we want to serve God selflessly. That's the progression. That is what happens. Now, if I said those are the three characteristics of a disciple, if any one of those is missing, I'm probably not a disciple yet. I'm probably not yet a disciple if any of those three characteristics is missing from my life. All right? So now, let's do a game kind of thing. Alex, right? Alex? Alex, let's suppose that church is over. You're getting ready to walk out and you hear Janet. Alex, wait a minute. I need to talk to you about something. What is Janet going to do? Probably ask Alex to serve someplace. And if Alex is like most human beings,